They say the most extraordinary truths are the ones no one dares to speak. When I slipped the wedding ring onto Ryan's finger and the world cheered, only I knew the magnitude of the secret stitched into the lining of my heart. Imagine standing at the altar, everyone you love in one room, their faces shining with hope, and yet knowing that you alone carry a burden so immense it could change the course of every relationship in your life. That day, as sunlight filtered through the stained glass, I, Emily, became somebody's wife and the sole guardian of a fortune so unimaginable. Most people only ever see such sums on the cover of business magazines. $500 million. My father's last gift, his legacy, his warning, and his challenge all at once. Protected in a silent fortress of legal trusts, known only to a lawyer sworn to secrecy and the grandmotherly woman who wiped my tears after my mother died. Subscribe and hit like. Our powerful stories add years to your life. Join our Story Lovers Club and let us know in the comments, where are you listening from? But why keep such a thing secret, you might ask? Trust me, I have my reasons, and each one is heavier than a gold ingot. I had tasted the bitterness of sudden, unguarded wealth before. Children pretending to befriend me just for birthday parties in our private bowling alley. Teachers whose faces twisted into polite masks when I was near. From childhood, I learned that money didn't just bend moods, it could bend souls. So, as Ryan and I stood in front of friends and family, me wearing a simple white dress, him with sawdust still lingering in his hair from a busy week, my vow, silent but ironclad, was that he would know the real me, not the size of my bank account. If ever there was proof love could exist in its rawest, barest form, I intended to find it, even if it meant living half a secret life for weeks, months, perhaps forever. The honeymoon wasn't in a penthouse suite with marble tubs or panoramic views. We checked into a shabby but charming hotel where the lemons in the water pitcher were almost fresh and the bedsheets smelled like bleach and detergent. Ryan, for all his big dream energy, carried me through the door like we were royalty, even though it was just a threshold with a slightly sticky doorknob. There were no fireworks that night, just pizza, popcorn, game shows, and laughter echoing against plain walls. As I watched him nod off beside me, his arm draped over me, a silent pledge to keep me tethered and safe, I mouthed a thank you into the darkness. First to my dad, for anchoring my life with his hard-earned wisdom. Then to a braver version of myself, just beginning to emerge from beneath the weight of old expectations. We moved into a small rental in a sleepy suburb. The place felt temporary but tender. Slanting sunlight over half-finished canvases in the corner of the living room. The hum of an old refrigerator as comforting as a lullaby. Ryan spun dreams with the care of a craftsman. Sketches of a company with his name on the sign. A lakeside cabin. A future dog who would chase sticks like a professional. None of those plans revolved around money. At least, not then. They were shaded with the optimism that comes from loving fully and being as Claire texted when she saw our first morning porch selfie, with someone who keeps his promises. I texted back, he is. We were stars in our own quiet sky, not yet realizing how soon shadows begin to creep. It's not the grand gestures that break a relationship. It's the accumulated weight of tiny disappointments. Ryan woke at dawn for his contracting jobs, his hair flecked with dust, his mind already racing through blueprints and potential. I caught the 7:10 bus, in jeans and a scuffed leather bag, blending into the gallery's routine. My coworkers knew me as Emily Reed, the girl with paint on her hands, not a cent to spare. At night, I'd bring back leftover cheese, soft brie, stubborn manchego, and cheddar you could smell a room away. We'd collapse into mismatched chairs, trading lousy wine reviews for homegrown critiques. This cheese tastes like sidewalk chalk. His grin never faded, even as I corrected. That's manchego. Our arguments were pedestrian. His socks, my paint jars, loud blockbusters versus weepy dramas on Friday nights. Once I filmed him falling asleep during a film, his snores whirring like a leaf blower. Claire sent back a dozen laughing emojis and blessed us with a single glowing heart. But after those golden first weeks, change seeped in, slowly, like a draft under a locked door. Ryan started scrolling his phone late into the night, his thumb flicking through videos of mountain retreats and get-rich-quick schemes. He'd say, if I could just land that one big contract, or gaze wistfully at home listings we couldn't possibly afford. I thought it was harmless, an itch for more that everyone feels sometimes. But the longer it lasted, the more I wondered whether the freedom we'd wrapped ourselves in was starting to feel too small for his dreams. The day he came home, grinning with a sparkling new coffee machine. It was on sale, he insisted, as though justifying a crime. I felt something shift. He argued it was an investment, because each latte was $2 not handed to a barista. Yet, I couldn't ignore that even small spending now meant tightening our belts elsewhere. At night, I drew a double line beneath non-essentials in our budget notebook and watched him perform small, hopeful rituals. In his world, ambition was a muscle that never got tired, while for me, every extravagance felt like a test I never signed up for. During Claire's next visit, her arms full of supermarket flowers, her eyes reading me like an old diary, she teased Ryan about his barista ambitions. And then, when we were alone, leaned in with tough, sisterly concern. You like honesty, she reminded me. Indeed, no friendship, love, or ethical compromise ever survived long in the glare of secrets. Right there, I nearly blurted everything. The trust, the numbers, my fears about where Ryan's new obsession might lead. But I swallowed it, a lump of doubt in my throat. My promise to myself, forged on wedding day, still held. For now. After that conversation, I kept my eyes wider. One evening, home earlier than usual, I found Ryan at the table, a stack of glossy brochures in neat piles. Sunlight caught on covers, declaring tomorrow's investment starts today. Flipping through smiling images of townhouses and promises of instant returns, I saw my own reflection. A woman determined, not to be fooled by easy pitches. Ryan played innocent. Just ideas. Maybe we could flip one, double our savings. Calmly, so calm even I could hear the steel in my voice. I told him, "We don't have the money for gambling." He shrugged, voice careful. "Aren't there people who could help? Friends, maybe your boss?" He trailed off when my eyes sharpened. The undertone was unmistakable. Was he asking if I had rich family, secret connections? I shut it down gently but firmly, kissing his forehead and repeating, "I like safe too." That night, our reflections overlapped in the bathroom mirror. "I want to give you the world," he said, as if love and security were interchangeable gifts. "I want you, not the world," I replied, forcing a smile. In the hush that followed, I wondered, if you protect your heart with silence, can you still recognize the moment it starts to break? As the days bled into weeks, I noticed the tone of our conversations begin to shift. At first, it was so subtle, like a glitch in a favorite song, here and gone before you could say with certainty that they were really different. But the pattern emerged, our evenings growing quieter, Ryan's gaze wandering off past me, searching not into my eyes, but somewhere on the far horizon, as if invisible doors to opportunity had appeared there, and he was the only one who could find the right key. I held my silence like an heirloom, tracing the edge of secrecy with every tepid sip of morning coffee, each casual "How was your day?" as we folded into routine. There was an unspoken question nested between us. If you could change your life overnight, would you dare? The world outside our door felt ruthless, offering two choices: fight for something bigger, or stay grateful for what you already have. I envied Claire's candor, envied how she could expose her hurts openly over voice messages that buzzed between our phones late at night. Whenever the empty ache of quiet grew too dense, I would listen to her, sometimes even replaying that single glowing heart she sent after seeing Ryan snore through a movie. "Honest hearts win," she liked to say. And even when I didn't believe her, I clung to the words as if they provided warmth. One rainy Saturday, the mood snapped. I suggested a walk in the park, just us, old sneakers and mismatched jackets, puddles reflecting the stormy sky above. But Ryan shook his head, distracted by a virtual tour of a property he'd found online. The digital world flashed with possibilities, each promise brighter and more tempting than the last. I tried to laugh it off, teased him about putting in a bid for Buckingham Palace next. He didn't smile. Even our jokes were changing, bending under the pressure of unspoken wants. By late October, the chill in the air mirrored the chill brewing between us. I found myself staring out the window after midnight, watching streetlights flicker in puddles, wondering how far we had wandered from the hopeful, pizza-filled evenings after our wedding. Ryan's ambition showed up as restlessness, constant, insistent, not entirely his fault. He had grown up in a house where dreams were currency, and everyone was pressured to trade them for reality as quickly as possible. One evening, as Halloween decorations began popping up on neighbors' lawns, Ryan proposed a risky move, taking out a loan just to get started on his house-flipping plan. I felt every molecule of my body bristle. I explained the risks. I pointed to our budget notebook, the flat lines where extra should always stay safely in the black. He pushed back, his words edged with frustration, a man trying to bulldoze an impossible barrier. "We could get ahead, Emily. Don't you want more?" That word, more, echoed through my head for days. Was I wrong to want security and simplicity? Did the comfort I craved look like complacency to him? I poured myself into painting after work, smearing colors onto canvas until my hands cramped, trying to create beauty out of chaos. Each brushstroke felt like a desperate plea. Let this mess turn into something worth keeping. During one of those nighttime painting sessions, Claire called. She listened to my quiet voice, the pauses between my admissions, and told me, "You're doing everything right. You can't carry someone else's hunger." I cried after we hung up, feeling as alone as I had on the day my father handed me the documents with his lawyer, the burden and privilege tied to my last name. The inherited fortune, the trust fund I dared not speak of, became a presence in our home as real as the refrigerator's hum or the morning traffic outside. It was always there, lurking in the background, waiting for the day its existence might upend every fragile foundation of trust I had built with Ryan. I replayed the lawyer's advice on a loop in my mind. Never let money change who you are. Use it as protection for your true self. Was I guarding him from greed, or guarding myself from disappointment? I couldn't be sure anymore. I began writing letters I never sent, attempting to make sense of my dilemma. In the first, I told Ryan everything: the numbers, the legacy, the origins of my family's wealth, stretching back through decades of struggle and sacrifice. But I crumpled each draft before dawn, unable to imagine the look in his eyes if he learned the truth. Would he see me, or just the money? Would our love warp and fray under the glare of possibility? At work, co-workers gathered for coffee breaks, sharing stories of student loan payments and hopeful dreams for modest raises. I envied their openness, the ease with which struggle bonded them together. My own worries were solitary, locked up tight behind pleasant smiles and jokes about starving artists. After another restless night, I found myself staring at the bank app on my phone, scrolling through transaction histories with growing anxiety. Even with $500 million in a trust, I felt more like a struggling 20-something than ever. It didn't help that the outside world seemed determined to remind me how far we could fall if we took a wrong step. News stories played in the background on our old TV. Bankrupt celebrities. Families torn apart by inheritance fights. Bitter betrayals and public meltdowns. Sometimes, Ryan would glance at the screen, shake his head, and mumble, "Rich people problems, huh?" I flinched every time, secretly wondering if I was, in some secret way, one of those people. The pressure mounted in December as cold seeped through our little rental, making everything ache. bones, hearts, patience. Ryan began working longer hours, sometimes coming home well past midnight, his face etched with exhaustion and hope. I tried to be supportive, left him sticky notes with good luck wishes and tiny hearts, but the unspoken weight between us never lightened. One Sunday morning, Ryan approached me with trembling hands, a stack of printouts clutched tight. "I did the math," he said, voice trembling. "If we can just put together a little money, I can build something real." "I'll do the work myself. Just need a little help getting started." The room felt smaller, the walls pressing closer as I realized we stood at a crossroads. To give in meant risking everything. To refuse meant risking him and possibly our future together. Both choices felt impossible. The silence between us stretched into something sharp. That afternoon, I walked through the neighborhood alone, autumn leaves crunching beneath my boots. I grappled with the truth I had hidden for so long, torn between the love I felt for Ryan and the loyalty I owed to myself and my father's legacy. Was love enough if its foundation was secrecy? Could trust survive if I kept this one last thing locked away? I returned home, determined to face our situation honestly. Ryan waited for me, hope flickering in his eyes, despite weeks of tension. "I want us to have a future, Emily," he said. "I want you to trust me enough to take a chance." I took a long breath and sat down opposite him. The coffee table between us, now as much a barrier as a bridge. "Ryan," I began, voice shaking, "I need you to know something important. I love you. But I also need you to love me. Not what I can give you, not what you think I might have." His face twisted in confusion, then fear. I reached for his hand, feeling the cold, anxious sweat on his palm. I realized then that the story of our marriage was about more than just love or secrets. It was about whether two people could build a life together with nothing but honesty and the stubborn hope that grew between them. I watched his reaction closely, the way his eyes filled with uncertainty, longing, and doubt. An entire universe of emotions playing out in an instant. Whatever happened next would define the rest of our lives. Silence hung heavily in the room after my confession, dense and charged, as if the air itself was waiting to see which direction our lives would turn. Ryan looked at me, his knuckles white as he gripped the armrest of his chair. For several heartbeats, I couldn't read his expression. And with a shuddering exhale, he pulled his hand from mine and pressed it to his forehead, absorbing what I had said and all that I had left unsaid. "Emily, are you saying you've been keeping something from me all this time?" His voice trembles, painted with hurt, much deeper than anger. Its confusion cut through me. Guilt raced through my veins, sharp and relentless. I gathered my courage and nodded. "I didn't want money to come between us," I whispered. "Not when we were just learning what it means to be us, together. Not when I was still figuring out who I wanted to be in this world." Tears stung at the corners of my eyes, but I forced myself to meet his gaze. "It was never about not trusting you, Ryan. It was about protecting something precious. Something I never wanted to poison what we have." He stood abruptly, pacing the room. "Do you think I would have loved you any less if I'd known?" His anger flared for a moment, but melted into pain. Or do you think I would have loved you more? The question stung, echoing in my chest. My answer was raw, honest, laden with vulnerability. I needed to know that your love for me was real. And nothing could cloud it, not money, not ambition, not dreams of more. He stopped pacing, collapsing onto the couch with his head in his hands. For a moment, neither of us moved. The world had shifted beneath our feet, and only time would reveal whether it would bring us together or tear us apart. In the days that followed, Ryan retreated into himself, processing the truth as if assembling a puzzle with missing pieces. I gave him space, aching with regret, but still sure that letting the secret out was the bravest thing I'd ever done. Quietly, I began to tell him the whole story, not just the numbers or the sum, but the history of my family's struggle, of my father's tenacity and my mother's hope. I described evenings spent listening to financial advice over dinner, my father's cautious lessons about luck and trust. After my mother died, the money became both blessing and burden. It protected us from hardship, but it also isolated us. I explained softly as we sat together one night, the hush between us less menacing than before. I learned that the world can be split by the smallest difference. Just one extra zero makes people see you through a lens you never asked for. I didn't want us to become that kind of story. Ryan listened, at times silent, at others peppering me with questions about my childhood, my decisions, my fears. When I told him about the lawyer and the secrecy, his forehead creased in concern, then softened as my honesty became a bridge between us once more. We spent long nights talking, unraveling years of doubt and fear, learning each other's silences. I hadn't realized how much of myself I had hidden until I saw my truth reflected in his eyes. Hurt, but also awe, and maybe even pride. What followed was not instant forgiveness. It was a cautious rebuilding. Two souls bruised by their own mistakes, and desperately trying to trust what remained between them. For the first time since our wedding, I let him into the quiet behind my laughter, the ache inside my easy answers. He let me see the depth of his ambition, the wounds left by growing up with little but dreams, his fear of failure gnawing at every risk. We went for long walks, our hands sometimes clasped, sometimes each of us lost in thought. We talked about what enough meant, whether security was a right or a privilege, if ambition was dangerous or necessary. We debated gently, fiercely, always coming back to each other through exhaustion and care. Once, standing on a windswept bridge over the river, he asked, "Would you give it all away if it meant we stayed like this forever? Just you and me, no secrets." My answer floated between us. If that's what it took, yes. But I think what we really need isn't less or more. It's just honesty. He squeezed my hand, the winter wind tearing at our hair and coats, and for the first time in months, I felt hope returning. A cautious, battered thing, but alive all the same. In the weeks that followed, we made decisions rooted not in fear, but in new, mutual respect. Ryan slowed down his relentless pursuit of more, giving himself permission to celebrate the wins he had, rather than chase ones that might never come. I opened the trust fund for discussion, letting him see how oversight and responsibility worked, what the restrictions were, and how little of it was actually in our hands to use for selfish wants. We started seeing a counselor, a neutral ear to help us untangle the webs of money, expectation, and love. Our sessions were uncomfortable at first, but gradually we found ways to express frustration without letting resentment fester. We learned that love could be both a shelter and a crucible, a force strong enough to withstand secrets, so long as truth was finally allowed to shape what came next. Our connection began to grow stronger, roots extending deeper than before. We hosted Claire for dinner, toasting to honesty with budget wine and laughter. Finally able to include her in jokes that ran deeper than anyone else could understand. We promised each other, quietly, that our story would look different from those splashed across scandalous news headlines. If there were lessons to be learned from the world's heartbreaks, maybe this was ours. Trust is built day by day, not inherited all at once. The story of our marriage is not a fairy tale with a neat ending. Instead, it is a tapestry of moments, some frayed, others brilliant with gold. With time, we learn to live with uncertainty, to face challenges as a team. Ryan's ambition transformed into practical projects. He started volunteering in the community, using his skills to help build homes for those who had none. He came home each night exhausted, but with a kind of joy I had never seen before on his face. I continued painting, my art shifting from troubled, stormy canvases to ones filled with light and boldness. I even mounted my first solo show, my work an echo of the journey we'd taken together. Every piece sold was not just a success, it was a testament to sharing my whole self with another. Our home, modest and cluttered, became a safe haven, filled with second-hand furniture and borrowed books, the laughter of friends, and the comforting routine of ordinary days. The fortune I had once guarded so fiercely became simply another detail in our story. No longer the main character, but a hum in the background, like the gentle thrum of a heart finally at peace. We found, together, that wealth is measured not in dollars, but in the depth of trust and the courage to be truly known. A journey towards rebuilding trust wasn't linear. It was riddled with setbacks, moments of doubt, and the need for repeated reassurance. There were days when past wounds resurfaced, when Ryan questioned new financial decisions or hesitated before expressing his own desires for the future. Sometimes a seemingly innocent comment about money would trigger an argument, reminding us how deep the scars from the secret still ran. But every difficult conversation became a brick in the foundation we were laying together. Lessons bloom. Instead of avoidance, we learned to face conflict head-on, guided by the lessons gleaned from therapy and our own determination to make things work. I found myself letting Ryan into corners of my world I'd once locked away, inviting him to meet with the family lawyer, reviewing old letters my father had written about the philosophy of responsible stewardship, explaining the obligations and restrictions placed on the trust that ensured it could never simply become a blank. Check. Ryan, in turn, revealed more of himself than ever before. He spoke about the hunger that had driven him since childhood, the sense of scarcity haunting his family for generations. He admitted that part of his ambition was a desire to never feel helpless again, to subdue the anxiety of wondering, what if? Knowing this helped me see the man I loved not as grasping or greedy, but as vulnerable. And I recognized that the money I feared would corrupt was actually just another obstacle for both of us to overcome together. As our relationship stabilized, so too did our circle of support. Claire, always a fierce advocate for honesty, became both confidant and cheerleader, her loyalty a guiding star on especially hard days. She started dropping by more often, her presence a balm that reminded us how connection could be fortified through transparency. One evening, Claire arrived unannounced for dinner, arms overflowing with groceries and stories about her chaotic work week. She settled at our kitchen table, dishing out advice with equal parts humor and wisdom. "You two are stubborn, but at least you're stubborn about growing," she teased, raising her wine glass. "That's rare, and it's what keeps you together." Conversations grew easier the more we included her in the reality of our lives. We laughed at her impressions of our therapist, commiserated over the ups and downs of everyday bills, and welcomed her insight into navigating conflict. When Claire revealed her own vulnerabilities, her fears of loving too deeply, of being left behind as others moved forward, I felt our story expanding into something richer. No longer just about the two of us, our marriage became a vessel for shared hope and mutual healing. Even neighbors began to notice the change. Invitations to small gatherings trickled in through handwritten notes and text messages, the kind that aren't offered out of obligation, but genuine affection. Through community, we found a way to stop letting wealth or secrecy isolate us. Together, we learned that honest relationships, new and old, were the true currency we wanted to collect. As time passed, my outlook on wealth subtly transformed. Instead of viewing the trust as an isolating secret, I began to see it for what my father had intended, a responsibility and a chance to create meaningful change. Inspired by our journey, Ryan and I attended seminars on philanthropy, listened to stories of others who navigated similar paths, took courses on ethical investing. We became acutely aware of the power money had, not just to protect, but to heal, to build. We made a joint decision to dedicate a portion of the trust's annual income to causes close to our hearts. Ryan championed affordable housing and vocational training, hoping to help those like his younger self unlock opportunities. I devoted time and resources to arts education, especially for children who had never picked up a paintbrush before. Each donation, every hour volunteered, became another thread weaving us together. Proof that neither ambition nor fear had to be destructive. Lessons bloom. Through trial and error, we built a roadmap for future choices, anchored by shared values rather than unilateral decisions. By involving each other, we made every step forward seem less daunting, more purposeful. For the first time, I realized that the greatest legacy I could honor was not the money itself, but the principle that real wealth is meant to be shared. Years into our partnership, our marriage bore little resemblance to the fragile, secret-laden union it had once been. Our home radiated comfort and warmth, a sanctuary where both triumphs and sorrows were welcome. The clutter on the shelves spoke of a couple who had lived, fought, laughed, and grown through adversity. Ryan flourished in his new role as a mentor within our community. He took pride not just in contracts won, but in empowering others, in seeing hope take root where it had once been missing. His dreams no longer revolved around accumulating wealth. Instead, they centered on building a life of impact and substance. The anxiety that had once driven him toward risky ventures gradually faded, replaced by the knowledge that stability was as much an attitude as an external condition. I too felt transformed. My art spoke of resilience and honesty. The canvases captured our journey, blending shadow and light. I held exhibits that raised funds for charity, gave talks at local schools, and mentored emerging artists. The secret I had once guarded became simply another story, wielded to inspire rather than alienate. Our marriage felt fuller, richer, rooted in daily acts of courage and kindness. Looking back, I see our story for what it is, not a tale of riches, but of what can endure when truth takes precedence over fear. Our journey taught us that love built on secrets is fragile, prone to shattering under the smallest pressure. But love rooted in honesty, even when the truth is hard, even when it risks pain, is a foundation that cannot be easily shaken. The final chapter isn't about the size of the inheritance or the luxuries money could afford. It's about the quiet certainty we found in each other, the friendships that deepened, the community that embraced us. The most significant riches turned out to be moments, humble dinners, nights spent talking through heartbreak and hope, mornings filled with laughter and the promise of a new day. Ryan and I learned, with time and patience, that the truest wealth is measured not in dollars, but in shared trust, growing empathy, and a willingness to be fully seen. For me, that was the inheritance I most wanted to pass on, not just to Ryan, but to every relationship we touched, every person inspired to choose courage over comfort. And so, as the sun sets on another day in our little cluttered house, I hold Ryan's hand, feeling the pulse of life alive between us. We are richer than we ever imagined, not because of secrets kept or fortunes gained, but because we chose love. Honest, imperfect, unbreakable, above everything else.